So let's get started. So for those who are joining in, welcome. My name is Charmaine. I run a blog and my Instagram here at the Canadian Wonder, and I'm hosting a couple of IG lives to talk to people who have traveled and lived across the world. And today we have Michelle, who's going to be talking to us about what it's like to work on a cruise ship. So Michelle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Michelle. I have also a travel blog, Wander Eat Right, and basically the last 8 years or so, I've just had different jobs that have allowed me to travel the world while working. So I've been at all seven continents, about 61 countries, and all through different jobs. And one of them that I had for 3 years was working on cruise ships. So that was pretty exciting, and yeah, excited to talk about it. And I think it's a great way to travel. It's a great way for people, who, not everyone can just save for a few years and then go on a 1 year sabbatical, right? That's not feasible for most people. And so I think, if you can get a job working on cruise ships, that's a great way to kind of sample different places where you might want to spend more time later on. And you get to see a lot of different places too.
I like how you talk about that you get a sample because the
Yeah.
one thing that I find about cruise ships is that like you don't get to spend a lot of time, especially the land.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice that you could kind of like hop in, hop out, and then decide, okay, maybe I want to spend more time here in the future, or I want to like live here or
hmm
something like that.
For sure. I mean, it's there are a lot of people who don't really like the cruise industry because, it's not really traveling. But as a crew member, you get to see so many different places. And yes, it is only for, short amount of time, but some places you'll keep going back every week because we'll have the same itinerary. So you might be going back to, say, Estonia like once a week for 8 weeks. So I feel like you get a really good sense of the place. You'll have an idea if you want to take a 1 week vacation there in the future, or if you potentially want to live there as well. So yeah, you do get a sample of a lot of places.
Oh, I like how you mentioned that because yeah, when you're on a cruise ship, you only get a few days, but like you said, like maybe your itinerary kind of kept going back, which I never
hmm
thought of.
Yeah, yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's hard as
So do
a
you,
guest, but yeah.
is it like you always have the same itinerary when you're on that one cruise ship?
It depends. So there's usually about 2 seasons during your contract. Most people, the busiest season will be obviously the summer season, right? So um, just the most general, most popular itinerary is like you'll do half a Caribbean, or you'll do a Caribbean season for half your contract, and then the other half of your contract might be in Europe, or you might do a crossing. Pre-COVID, you would do an Oceania area itinerary, and then you might cross back to the Pacific Ocean, West Coast side. You might do Alaska. You might do, Long Beach, or that side of Mexico. So it really depends on what ship you get, how your company works, because all the different cruise lines have kind of they generally run the same, but they might stay in one part of the world where some might do a lot of crossing. So it all really depends on what line you end up and what the ship's itinerary is. But yeah, you could end up with potentially two different really great itineraries if you're lucky. And yeah, that's like the ideal thing. Oh, someone said hi from Mexico. Hi.
Yeah, I know it's so funny because I was just
Yeah.
thinking, I was like, wait, we were just talking about Mexico earlier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so tell me, how did you get started working on a cruise ship? Because I think that's I think that's something that people think about too, and not a
Mhm.
lot of information is out there, I feel.
Yeah. So I originally, like you, I was an English teacher. I was teaching in Japan for a couple of years. And then after that, I decided I kind of wanted to just have a change, but I still wanted to travel. So I ended up working or volunteering on a Japanese cruise ship as an English teacher. It was called Peace Boat. And I did that for 4 months, and I realized like, this is great. I really enjoy it, but I was kind of done with teaching for a bit. I just wanted a break. So I just kind of looked for different cruise shops. I thought maybe that could be a good fit for me. So I ended up working with Royal Caribbean for 3 years, working as a youth counselor. Some cruise lines say youth counselor, some say kid staff. It's all the same. So yeah, I was with them for 3 years. just doing a bunch of the kids' activities at the daycare facility that we have, and ended up loving it. Yeah, spent 3 years with them. And yeah, that's pretty much how that started.
And how does it work in terms of like, I think you mentioned that usually they hire you for a 1 year contract and it could be 2 seasons, kind of like that. Is that what contracts are usually like?
Yeah, so most contracts on the ship, of course, it really depends on the cruise line and your position. It could be anywhere from, I think, like 3 months to 9 months.
Okay.
So the more higher level your position is, for example, like the officers and captains, their contracts are usually shorter. And then mine was kind of in the middle. I usually had like 5 to 6 month contracts as a kid staff. And then there are some people, especially the back of the house, if they're doing housekeeping or they're working in the galley, their contracts could be as long as 9 months. So, if you think about a 5 month contract that goes between, seasons, that can be from like June to in the autumn, and you will have a split itinerary in that case. So yeah, it just depends.
Awesome. That's great.
Mm.
So what kind of positions are available on the cruise ship? I know you mentioned like one of them, like for you, was working for kiss staff, but
Mhm.
what else kind of opportunities do most people kind of like that there is? What else is
Mhm.
there?
Yeah, so there's two general, I mean, if you think about it like a floating hotel, that's what cruise ships are, right? So
Mhm.
you'll have back of the house positions and front of the house positions. So back of the house, meaning you'll have housekeeping, janitorial, cleaning, a galley, laundry, maybe working on deck. And then front of the house, you'll have, like my position, working in the kit staff, guest services, lifeguards, obviously the entertainment department. So the people
Mhm.
who are putting on the shows, there's singers, dancers, comedians even. And then you have the adult activity staff. They're called the cruise director staff on some ships. And even the shore excursion staff and working in the casinos. Yeah, so there's literally anything that you need to run a hotel is we have all those positions available, as well as obviously the main like captain, first officer, security people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a lot of people when you think about the
Hmm.
staff on a cruise ship. It's a lot of staff.
Yeah, it's like on the big ship, it's over 1,000 crew members. It's just, for I don't know, 5,000 passenger ship, you'll have a lot of crew members because everyone, you need to be able to run the ship in every aspect. So, yeah, from all the way from like the engineering side to, just making sure the guests are happy and providing activities for them. Yeah.
And what are like, do cruise ships look at certain maybe requirements like citizenship,
Hmm.
or I guess it really depends on, I guess for sure it depends on the position, of course, as well. But what are the general requirements, would you say, to work on a cruise ship?
Yeah. So, most of the time you will want to have good basic knowledge of English because that's what
Mhm.
most cruise ships use as their form of communication. So, but there are ships that are, primarily based in Italy. If that's the ship you're going to be working on, you should probably, want to know a bit of Italian. And yeah, for as far as certification, there is one basic one called STCW. I'm not sure what it stands for. I can't
That's
remember
okay.
anymore. But that's basically the very general certification that all crew members need to have. So it covers like safety, what to do if there's an emergency on the ship, what do you do? There's like crowd management, all of those things. And depending on the cruise line might cover it for you. So for example, I worked with Royal Caribbean, and I was lucky enough that they provide that training within your first week. So you can go on the ship and get that training. For other cruise lines, they might require you to go to a training facility before you come on board. So then you'll do the training there. So yeah, there's that. And then, well, I haven't worked on the ship since COVID, but I did ask my friends about vaccinations because you mentioned that before. And I think most ships will require some sort of COVID vaccination.
Mhm.
To the what extent, like the boosters and stuff, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's like I said, it will depend on the cruise line. So, um, yeah, not all cruise lines are the same. So if something doesn't work for you, if someone looking for a job, if it doesn't work for them for one cruise line, it might be worthwhile looking at other cruise lines to get jobs for that.
Yeah,
Other requirement,
and
yeah, sorry. Yeah.
go ahead, go ahead. I'll let you
Yeah,
finish.
other requirements you mentioned visas. The visa should be tied with the contract. So um, as long as you have a valid passport, that's also a thing. If you're looking for a job on a cruise ship, you do need a valid passport. I think a lot of people put that in the back of their mind. And when you're applying, you do need a valid passport for that, and they'll be able to give you a visa once you get the job. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, like, you would probably have some visa requirements depending
Hmm.
on your citizenship and whichever countries you might be going for your cruise, right?
Yeah, each country has, different requirements, and sometimes it takes a very long time to get those visas. Just depending on how the embassy is working in your area, how quickly they can get it to you. So um, it 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 can be difficult to get that first contract on a cruise ship. It can take some time, but just be patient. It will. If the recruiter is talking to you and keeping in touch, then it might take time, but it'll go through.
So usually if they're like, okay, this is the cruise ship, this is where we're going to be stopping, they would help you with all the visas for those places that you're landing to.
Yeah, the cruise line should take care of that. Hmm.
So everything's like taken care of.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I know you mentioned that it's super competitive sometimes to get that first job. So how do people actually do find work on a cruise ship?
So there's several options. So you can just, go directly to the cruise line's career website. Usually if you like, for example, go to Princess Cruises, you'll scroll all the
Mhm.
way down, at the bottom of the website, they'll have, little tabs, and you can see there's a little sign that says careers. You click on
Yeah.
that and you can apply there. There's also cruise specific job boards. I think the
Mm.
two most popular ones, I wrote it down here. The two most popular ones are cruiseshipjobs.com
Okay.
and allcruisejobs.com. So those are the two most common ones. And, sometimes the cruise lines, they'll have their postings on their own website, but they'll also, contact these recruiting boards and post there as well. So you can apply to both, just kind of see what sticks. And I will say right now is probably a really good time to apply because there are a lot of staff shortages. So while it is competitive, I'm not sure if it's as difficult as it used to be. If you meet all the requirements of your position and, you're a good fit, then I feel like they would contact you pretty quickly.
Awesome. And do you have any advice on like how can you be kind of more stand out? How can you stand out in this kind of
Mhm.
like competitive industry?
Um, I think it goes for like all jobs, right? Just make sure that your CV or your resume is actually tailored to the job, right? So, um, there's probably a few positions that people might be interested in within one cruise line. But it really doesn't help if you send one CV for all three of those positions, right? So definitely tailoring the CV to the specific position. It takes extra time, but it's definitely worth it because, for example, if you want to be a lifeguard on the cruise ship and you have lifeguarding experience, make sure that is front and center. That will catch their
Mhm.
attention. Make sure to put if you're bilingual because that's always a plus on cruise ships, or trilingual. Um, yeah, those will definitely help. And if you have a first aid certification, if you have CPR training, all of those things are not necessarily required, but they will definitely help candidates stand out. That way, the cruise ship knows, oh, this person has been, knows what is required, what will be required of them on the ship, and has a leg up compared to someone who may not have those certifications and trainings.
I know you mentioned that there was that certification that you had to take before you go
Mhm.
on, that they trained you. Is
Mhm.
that similar to first aid?
It is different. And I think it is a little more expensive than just the standard first aid training. So, but that's another thing. That's another great point. If people can get that before they go on board, that will definitely help them stand out. Although I don't know if I recommend that because if you don't get the job on the cruise ship, then that's kind of a waste, right? So maybe, um, if you get the first aid certification and CPR certification, that might show you are willing to put the time and effort into getting those certifications. And then if the cruise ships contact you later on, then you can always tell them like I'm more than willing to do the STCW, um, and that way you don't kind of do it and then like not end up with a job and then kind of wasting your time and money.
Yeah, well, I feel like with the first aid and CPR, like it's so useful for so many jobs
Hmm.
anyway. That is not exactly wasted. Like if you're a camp counselor or if
Exactly.
you're a lifeguard, like you need those anyway.
Exactly. And a lot of, I feel like a lot of jobs utilize that as well. And even then, it looks really good on anyone's CV because it shows, they're willing to put the extra time and, kind of expanding their skill sets. So I think it's great. I took it before I applied for cruise ships and just having that knowledge in everyday life, like I just felt more prepared in case anything happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something you can use for the rest of your life as well,
Hmm.
like having that knowledge because you never know when you need that first aid training,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? So what is the schedule like on cruise? What is it like living on a cruise ship?
Yeah, so it will depend on your job. So most of the time, though, you have kind of shift blocks throughout the day. So it's not necessarily you'll work 9 to 5. It'll be your day is going to be split up. We don't have days off, so you will work for the entirety of your contract, whether it's 5 months, 9 months, you're going to work the entire time.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so you have hours off though. So for example, um, if we were at sea, that a sea day, so we don't stop on land anywhere, I might work, in the kids center from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. And then I might have a 2 hour lunch break, rest break, and then I'll come back to work at 2 and work till 7 and then have a couple hours off. And then I might work a few hours in the evening as well. If it's a port day, um, some of us have to work while we're in port, but it rotates, depending on the schedule and the itinerary. So if I'm off on a port day, I'll work probably a couple hours in the morning, and then I'll have like, most of the afternoon off. But then that means in the evening, I'll work like 6 to possibly 7, 8 hours after I come back. And if I'm not allowed out on the port day, meaning I have to work, I'll just work, from like 9 to 4 or 5, and then I'll have the rest of the evening off after that. So it depends. It depends on, your job. That was just an example from working in the kids department.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it varies for everyone, but generally speaking, we all just kind of work like broken up shifts throughout the day.
How many hours would you say in a day do you work?
It depends. In the kids department, it depends on the season. Is it high season? Is it low season? How many kids are on board? How busy are we? Because the more kids we have, the more staff we need in the room. So you can work anywhere from 5 or 6 hours, I think, to the most I worked in one day one time was like 12 or 13 hours.
Oh my
Um,
God.
but those higher numbers usually happen around like the holidays. So the Christmas cruises, New Year's cruises, summer break cruises, that's bound to happen.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that on port days sometimes you have to work. So does that
Mhm.
mean like what is like do you guys get to go out or maybe you rotational get out? Like how does it work?
Yeah, it used to work on a rotation. I'm not sure about now, since COVID has changed some of the crew allowance of who's allowed to go out of the ship, and I'm not sure how that's working right now. But before it used to be, the kids center was always open on port days. So
Okay.
we will always need staff in there and we'll just rotate. So for example, let's say in a 1 week cruise, on the day we're in Aruba, if I have to work for this week's Aruba, next Aruba I'll be off. So then I can get off on that one. But if we're in Aruba and I have to work, then yeah, I'll be working from 9 to 5 or whatever for the entire time. And then once the ship, is we leave, we go to sea, we're out of port, then I'll have the entire evening off. So yeah, it just depends. And also it depends on how the managers make the schedule.
Okay. So I mean, like you said, you don't really get days off, but you still do have opportunities to go out to the port though.
Definitely. Well, yeah, pre-COVID. I think now there are some limitations with crew members, unfortunately. But before, yeah, if you're not working and you're in the port, you can go if you're not working or you're not required to stay on the ship. Yeah.
Awesome. So they're not like, I guess you don't consider days off per se, but then you still have those hours where like if you're
Right.
have fun.
Right. And I will add that your time off on ships can be used however you want. So if you want to go out in port, that's great. That's encouraged. But we are encouraged to think about, how much rest our body needs, because that is also our rest time from work. That's our break. So, at the end of your work shift, you can either go hang out with friends or you can sleep, or take a shower. It's up to you to choose, but it's not like you're going to get extra time off later. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I like how you point that out. And I'm like, oh, like, yeah, port time. Of course I'm going to leave
Yeah.
it, Wow.
Yeah.
Like you said, like it is a limited amount of time.
For sure.
I like do they have like enough, like there's no set of how many hours you work or how many hours you get off, right? Like it's just
there is a basic guideline. I think that was put in pretty recently in the last decade or so, just because a lot of crew members were just working way too many hours and the cruise lines were unfortunately taking advantage of people. So now there are limits. You do need to be given a certain number of breaks and time off so that you do get at least 8 hours of sleep or something like that. Although I think some ships operate with 6 hours minimum. I'm not sure anymore. But yeah, there are rules now to ensure that crew members have sufficient amounts of rest. But just working on a ship you're constantly surrounded by people. There's not much privacy. You have to decide, am I going to go outside today, for lunch in Curacao, or am I going to do my laundry? That will still add, I think, some stress and exhaustion, no matter how much rest you have.
Yeah, and I find it like listening to you, like it sounds like you don't have a set schedule, so you can't really plan. Well, I mean, you can plan ahead, but like there's no stable schedule. So it's kind of like every day is kind of different.
Yeah, it changes, but, it depends on your department. Like some departments are very predictable. Nothing will really change. But yeah, for my department and the kids department, it changed, but at least we would get the schedule for the week or for the cruise. So you can kind of see, okay, this is what my next 4 days, 5 days is going to look like, and just kind of plan from there. But yeah, you can't really make super long-term plans. Like sometimes we'll have friends that tell us like, oh, I'm going to be in Miami on this day. Are you going to be free when your ship comes in? And, if it's 2 weeks out, I have no idea if I'm going to be free or not. So that part is a little unpredictable.
And what is the accommodation like on the ship? I think that would be very interesting for me to know.
Yeah, so they're small. Yeah, so at least for Royal Caribbean, you have one roommate and then you have a bathroom in your little cabin. The beds are bunked, and at least, what's nice is in the bunk, there's a little privacy curtain. So like your bunk is your space. So there'll be, two beds, and then most rooms have like a little desk. Um, what else? Yeah, a small bathroom. You'll have a little fridge,
Mm-hmm.
um, and a small TV, and that's about it. It's very simple.
Okay.
Like yeah, most people don't really spend time in their cabins, because you're either working or you're outside or you're sleeping. Like, there's no point in spending too much time in your cabin. Um, so yeah, and it's too small to really, you don't want to be in there for too long.
Yeah, I'm surprised you have a little TV. Is it cable?
Um, I don't even remember what it was. It was like we would have crew channels. So it's
Ah,
whatever
yeah.
the whatever is available on the cruise TV network. Like, they'll have like different channels. Like, one is like the weather channel. You'll
Mm-hmm.
just see what the weather is like outside. And then one will just play movies for the crew. Like, there'll be like movies of the week and stuff. And then a few other movie channels for the guests. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I think I remember. I remember having a TV, and I remember like it would have like the schedule on the TV.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they'll have
And
the
then I
daily
think there's a
schedule.
couple of movies as well.
hmm Yeah. Yeah, it's very limited, but I mean, like I said, you're not spending too much time in your room anyway. I don't think even guests spend that much time in their room. So,
Mhm.
yeah, the TV is not that important.
Yeah, you probably. I mean, if you have time, you probably just want to go to the entertainment instead and go watch a show.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so many great shows and so many great activities on these ships now. Like, yeah, you don't need to be in your room.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so much going on.
hmm
Um, let's talk about some of the perks. What are some of your favorite perks on working on a ship?
Well, I mean, the obvious one is you get to travel, right? You get to see
Mhm.
a lot of different places, and some places that are could be very expensive to fly to on your own. So there's obviously that, but I think for me, the biggest perk is like just meeting so many people from around the world. Because the crew itself, they're from like dozens of different countries, and you can kind of just go to the crew bar and like, okay, I want to hang out with, oh, there's the Ukrainians over there. I'm just going to go and talk to them. Or, I made so many friends from South America. So a couple years ago, I just took a trip down to see them. I went to Peru to see one friend, and then went to Panama to see another friend. And it's cool because you have like a local tour guide, and I feel like anywhere I go now, I know at least one person. Like, the people I'm meeting up with in Mexico, they're all from my ship life. So, yeah, it's just great. I don't think I would be able to have all these connections if, I didn't work on ships.
Yeah, I like that, and I think that's really cool because, like you said, like when you work on a cruise, people come from all over the world, and
hmm
so you really have an opportunity to kind of see the world in your ship, not just
hmm
outside of it.
Absolutely. It's like a small, like, it's like a sampler of everyone from, all these different countries, and they're just in this ship with you. It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And do most people stay in this kind of industry? Like, do you think that most people kind of like do this long term, or is it kind of mostly like short term for younger people?
It depends on the person and the position, and what country they're from. So, as an American, the money is not great for
Mhm.
Americans. But for example, for people, from Indonesia or the Philippines, the money is a lot better for them. It's worth more for them. So I feel like they have more incentive to stay in the industry. Whereas for me, after COVID, I had other options, and I just decided it might be better just to move on. But yeah, it also depends, how long people are willing to have that lifestyle. It's a great lifestyle, but it can be difficult, especially if you have a family, you have kids, you're away for so long.
Mhm.
So it is, I will say, maybe more popular with younger crew members, but there's definitely a lot of people who have families back home, and, clearly miss home, but they're doing it because, they're able to bring in a really good income.
Yeah, and I did notice that on cruise ships as well. Like you
hmm
said, like in Southeast Asia or maybe in some parts of Africa.
Yeah.
I definitely did see that more.
hmm
So, what do you think are some of the really harsh challenges?
Well, definitely, if homesickness is a thing, especially during COVID, like when there were a lot of crew members just stuck on the ships, it was homesickness. It was not knowing when it was going to end. They were just isolated, quarantined in their little cabins, and limited food options sometimes. So if you're vegan, that can be tricky. It's not impossible to be vegan or vegetarian, but some I did know of some vegetarians who had to make some changes just to their diet, just to make sure that they were getting enough nutrients. So there's that. Also, very little privacy. Like you share a room with someone, you go outside, you live with the people you work with, right? And you're around them all day, every day. And I will say, Ali, I didn't experience this, but I know for people who are non-native English speakers, to work in an English-only environment all day for so many months at a time can be very, very challenging. And it can add to the homesickness, So, but the great thing about that is you will always find your paisanos or like your people from your own country. So you'll see, during off hours, people will be kind of grouped with people who speak their same language. And I mean, good for them because I can't even imagine, speaking a different language for that long. And, it's can be very stressful. So, for people who may not have lived in that environment, I would just say to be prepared for that added stress. Just, constantly using a different language can be very taxing.
Yeah, especially if I can imagine being that long hours. It's kind of like you're kind of like stuck.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
And it's like different types of English too, right? So like, for example, if we're in, for example, half my contract is out of Miami, you'll be used to one English. And then if we cross over to do a European tour, you're going to have more British English. And, for some people, it sounds completely different. I mean, it does sound completely different to me, but, words and phrases could be different. So it can take some getting used to.
Yeah, I've actually definitely experienced that too, where like someone's really harsh accents, like I'll be like, I can't even understand. I'm like, what is going on?
It's difficult. Yeah. And even on the ship, because everyone is using English most people are using English as their second language. It's not perfect English. It's like global English, ship English.
Right.
So, for some people, they cannot, it's very difficult for them to understand another crew member's English because they just haven't heard English with that other accent before. And it can take a lot of getting used to. Like definitely for me, I felt that too with some crew members. I was like, oh, wow, okay, I have to really pay attention and like look at their mouths to really understand what they're saying because it was just English that I wasn't used to.
Yeah, and I definitely experienced that too, and I was in shock because I'm like so used to like American or North American English.
Yeah.
Even like when I like met people from like Scotland or Ireland, Northern Ireland, like I was shocked. I was like, wow, this feels different.
Yeah. But it's kind of cool, right? Because it's like you don't have to travel to those places to like kind of get a taste of what it is and kind of hear what the language could be like over there. So it pros and cons, right? It's exciting and it's fun, but it's also a challenge.
Yeah, and when you mentioned like usually when they do a contract, like they usually stay on the same boat during that, like same ship for the whole entire contract. So if it's a 9-month contract, do you stay on that one ship?
Most of the time you'll be on the same ship. Yeah, most of the time. There are obviously caveats, but for the most part, your contract is tied with the ship.
Awesome. So like you said, like you might move to a different location, but still you're on the same ship.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's kind of nice because you'll have your room and that's usually going to be your room for the entire, 5 months, 9 months, whatever. So you can get cozy and, you get comfortable and that's your room. You don't have to worry about, in 3 months, I'm going to have to go to a different cabin or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's less adjustment because I'm guessing it's the same crew member as well that you're kind of like living and working with every single day.
Yeah, most of the time your roommate, you'll usually go through at least 2 roommates in your contract just because our contracts never line up exactly, right, with your roommate. So either they'll leave before you, or you'll leave and they'll have a new roommate. So you will have at least one new roommate, probably. But for the most part, you can expect to stay in your same room and roommate for at least a few months.
Okay. So like, yeah, because people have different contracts.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they kind of like maybe leave like at a port at some point.
Sorry?
They leave like during a port, like maybe one of the days that you're at port, and then they leave during that time kind of thing.
Yeah. So usually, the crew will change on the turnaround day. So that's when a cruise is ending and then another cruise is starting. So that'll be in the home port. So usually the first port and last port of each itinerary. Yeah.
So then like it depends on the contract. So some people might leave during that time.
Yeah.
Nice. What are your lengths of contract?
Mine was between 5 to 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. So I felt like it was pretty good. Like, you get there, you get a good feel for the ship, you get to experience a lot of different places. 5 months is plenty to have a couple different itineraries. And you feel it by the end. By the end, you're like ready to go. But there were a couple ships where I didn't feel completely burned out. But if my contract had been, say, 7 months, I would definitely have been ready to go by then. But 5 months, I feel like, is a good amount of time.
I feel like 5 months kind of nice because you kind of get a chance to really meet people. You're working with the same people, get to know them, and then you get to kind of really feel the life of the ship as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. And then like you said, like that could be different itinerary. So like during those 5 months. Because usually like cruises are like what, 1 to 2 weeks, right?
It really depends. They can be as short as 3 days. They can be, the longest one I did was maybe like 15 days, but that was a very a rare, like once in a season. We did a crossing from, I think we started in St. Petersburg, Russia, and then we went all the way across through Iceland, Greenland, and then we ended up in the northeast of America, and then also part of Canada there as well, Halifax. I think that's where we stopped.
Nice, yeah, East Coast.
Yeah, East Coast. Yeah, so that was, that one took maybe 15 or so days, but most itineraries will be between 3-4 days to a week and a half. Yeah.
Nice. So you get some variety. Like it could be like different places all the time.
Yeah, and also it just depends on the ship. Like I know there are some ships that only do the 3-day cruises. I had one ship, I was there for a couple months doing that. And the time goes really fast, because you have the first day, turnaround day, and then you have a sea day and then a port day. And then the next day you're back on turnaround day again. So it goes really quick. But that one, unfortunately, did not have that great of an itinerary because it was only one port. Yeah.
So then you would just keep doing that again throughout the few months.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice because I think you mentioned that. Like, so that means you can go to the port a few times.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's, like I said, there's pros and cons to everything, right? So I think most people think that they would love a really long cruise, so that they can see so many ports. Usually the longer cruises mean they're going through a canal or they're doing a crossing or something. But in reality, sometimes the longer cruise can be more work because it's the same guests. And if you don't get along with one of the guests, or, you constantly have a kid coming that is a problem child and is disruptive, it can be difficult to have that kid for 15 days. Whereas if it's a 3-night, 4-day cruise, the kids are gone, the guests are gone before you really have a chance to get frustrated with them. So there's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah, and I think also, like you said, if it's a longer cruise, you maybe get a chance to get to know the guests a little bit better as well.
Yeah, exactly. And if it works out, that's great, right? If you really get along with a guest and have great rapport with them, it's great. Pros and cons to everything.
So it really depends, right? It depends if you get along with them or you don't.
But I will say though, in most cruises, you're never gonna not get along with anyone, right? So you could have one guest that is really difficult with, but there will always be like five other great ones. It's just that the one that is difficult usually tends to stick out. But there are plenty more guests and kids that are amazing and you love seeing them. So yeah, it all works out.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of my last questions for you will be asking you like, what kind of advice would you have for somebody who's maybe considering a career on a cruise ship?
I would say just go for it. It's one thing to hear about what it's like working on ships, to see it, but when you're actually on the ship and working, it's completely different. And if someone is qualified for a job that they see on ships and um, it's a good opportunity for them, like the timing in their life works out, I would say definitely do it. You don't need to commit to a full year, 10 years, just commit to one contract and just see how it goes. And even in that one contract, if you decide to never come back again, at least you'll have that experience and you'll get to see a few places and bring back money. I forgot to add, another great thing about working on ships is you don't really spend too much money that you make. Unless you're in ports, and you're eating out every port that you go to and stuff. But if you're conscientious about the money that you make on ships, you can bring back a good amount and save for your future.
Right, because you get all you can eat on cruise ships.
Yeah, you're eating the crew food. You'll have the opportunity to go out once in a while, but you don't have any utility bills to pay. You don't have rent to pay. I don't know if you have a car at home, but if you decide to get rid of your car before you come on the ship, like you're not going to be paying for that. So there are benefits to it. Yeah.
Do you guys have different food for crew members, or you just get to eat everything on the cruise ship as well?
No, it's different. It's different. So we have a crew mess, and some ships even have two crew messes, depending on your rank. And a lot of the crew food is usually tailored to, I would say, the Southeast Asian diet because we have so many crew members from that area. So there's no shortage of rice, which I'm okay with. No shortage of rice. There's usually, several protein options. The vegetarian options are usually like hit or miss, unfortunately. But there's always some type of salad bar. There's always bread available. Fruits is also hit or miss, just depending on what's available. So for me personally, like, I know if I don't have a banana, every few days, like my potassium level drops. And one time I actually fainted on the ship because we didn't have bananas for like 2 weeks and I just didn't have any. Yeah. So just be careful of that. If there are people with like dietary restrictions, just be aware. It could be more limited on the ship. And also, as with everything, it depends on the cruise line. Like some cruise lines may have better food for crew members. Some cruise lines may not, but for Royal Caribbean, I was pretty happy with their offerings. So yeah, it's not like what you're seeing the guests are eating, but it's still good. It's still okay.
So is there like set times that you get it, or is it also like it's just open bar and you can just kind of go and get it whenever you need?
Yeah, there are set meal periods. So there's a breakfast, a few hours for breakfast, few hours for lunch, few hours for dinner. And then, but some of the bigger ships, I believe, could have food pretty much 24/7. And there's always the store on the ship for crew members. So if you want snacks or something, you can always pop in there as well and get that.
Awesome. Because I remember like the one thing about cruise ships is like 24/7 food. And then my family was like, oh my God, we're going to gain so much weight. And it's not actually healthy.
Yeah, I mean, for guests, it's great. I remember I went on a cruise as a guest when I was like 12 or 13. I just remember my friends and I just constantly like, there's endless pizza. I'm going to go get more pizza, like constantly getting pizza. Yeah, but for crew members, it's a little different. But I mean, it's not like we can eat like 24 hours a day. We're pretty busy. So food is oftentimes just like, okay, I'm just going to go eat really fast for 15 minutes and then I'm going to go take a nap.
Yeah, so you have to really, I think the one thing that I want to take away from this is like you have to have really good time management, and you really have to
Yeah.
prioritize
Yeah.
because
But
like you don't have a
yeah.
lot of time.
Yeah, I would say like the first couple weeks, it does take getting used to, but after a while, it's just like, okay, I look at my schedule. All right, I have these hours off. Yeah, I'll do laundry here. I'll take a nap here. I'll shower here. And yeah, it gets easier.
Is the laundry free or is it like laundry as well?
That depends on the cruise line. I have heard of some cruise lines charging crew members to do laundry, which I think is odd, but
Yeah.
for Royal Caribbean at least, it is covered. So it's free laundry facility, but you do have to do your own laundry.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's basically like basically everything's covered, but you just have to do the work.
Yeah, yeah. It's the facilities are there for you.
Awesome. Yeah, and then I guess my last question for you is what's next for you, or are you planning something?
Mexico is next. And then hopefully just working on my blog a little more. But we'll see. Everything kind of is not, I don't know. I've stopped making long-term plans.
Nice.
So yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
Well, I know you do freelance writing, right? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I do freelance writing, so that's always keeping me busy. But yeah, I am behind on my blog. I was just working on that actually before we chatted. So just articles I need to update, and you know how it is. Just getting those written.
Blog work is a lot of work. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yeah, but it is rewarding, I will say, like, because now I can look back and, when people ask me about, for example, working on cruise ships, I have a whole article about that they can just, instead of me explaining everything, now I can just send it to them. And someone told me recently that they provide classes for people looking for work on cruise ships, and they use that as part of their curriculum, which is kind of cool. Yeah. So, you never know who your articles are helping.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the great thing about organic traffic and the internet.
Yes. And especially because you're doing a lot of, working abroad and teaching abroad, now is a great time for that. People are interested in it, and you can provide them with so many resources. So it's a lot of work, but it pays off for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, like there's always like people always want more resources.
Yeah.
I think there's always like different ideas coming from different people. So I always like to, hear what other people have done, or read what they've done and how they did it, because I feel like everyone's journey is a little bit different.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, there's so many people that do these different jobs. Like, so many of us have taught English in different countries or worked on ships, but not everyone writes about it or provides those resources for other people. So it's great what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about your experience. I think I've learned so much.
Thanks.
And I definitely have. I mean, it is a tough job. And you know what? I remember when I was younger, I thought about it as well. And I'm like, this is not easy.
It's not easy, but nothing easy is worth having, right? Like it's so rewarding, and obviously personally I feel like the benefits outweigh the difficulties that come with it. So if people are interested in it, it doesn't hurt to try. Just see what it's like. Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely. And it's something you grow too. Like you're growing so much on the ship because of that experience, because of everything you're doing. Like it's like I said, like you need to do time management, and you're really pushing yourself to grow. Because you have to take care of yourself and everything else going on as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much again. I hope to talk to you soon again, Michelle.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was so much fun. Thanks, Charmaine.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.